Hello everyone, welcome back to our sessions. We're just going to give any latecomers a couple of minutes extra buffer to join us and before we go fully live. Thank you. All right, I think that's enough. So thank you everyone for joining up. Good late afternoon and welcome to our MCIT and EY learning journey. This is our training number 4 out of a series of 5 trainings, and we're going to cover e-gaming entrepreneur journey. Before we go into the content, let me walk you through the 5 modules that we're going to cover. The 5 modules will be will be the entrepreneur journey and the entrepreneurship basics. Those are still to come. And for those ones who were able to catch us yesterday, we have already covered the industry overview, the marketing, and earlier today, design thinking. And now, without further delay, please let me hand over my word to Luis, who will walk you through his entrepreneurial journey.
Thank you, Marash. Good afternoon, everybody. It's morning here in Montreal. My name is Louis René Auclair. I've already been with you yesterday, and it was great to talk with all of you. Today, I will be talking about my personal entrepreneurial journey. So it's a very personal presentation for me, and I hope you enjoy it. Feel free, if you want to ask questions, line them up in the presentation. And at the end, we're going to read through questions, and hopefully we have a lot to discuss. With regards to me, I've been in the video games industry for about 20 years. I've been a studio owner, a producer, business developer, and overall, I've been working on over 60 games in my career. At Hibernum, which was my previous studio, I grew the studio from 12 people to 160 people in the span of 5 years. Through that time, we've generated about $60 million worth of deals and revenue. So I utilize a lot of my key learnings throughout my entire life and career to become the entrepreneur that I am today, with success and with failure. And today I run Rocket Ride Games, which is a video games agency. Basically what we do is we help studios around the world to, against many critical aspects of game making, from pitch to development to production to free-to-play management and self-publishing. So if we look at some of the points that I want to discuss with you guys today, first of all, it's going to be the core entrepreneurial concepts, right? What are the core concepts for myself, which was question everything, creativity and resilience, and focus on your strengths. After that, I'm going to show you my professional journey. So from university all the way to multiple jobs and careers that I had. And finally, looking forward, what I'm expecting to hopefully happen for myself and my company. And at the end, the Q&A session, which is always very interesting. So please, like I said earlier, feel free to ask as many questions as possible. So becoming an entrepreneur is a long journey, right? A lot of people would like to have shortcuts in life or in business or in getting rich fast. Those things don't really exist. So there are rarely any shortcuts to become an entrepreneur. You have to go through the school of hard knocks, as well as the school of business, as well as gathering experience in your field. For me, this is not something that you can only learn in school. You can perfect it in school, you can improve it, you can have school that are going to help you with accounting, finance, marketing, management, but you need to have the right mix of school and professional experience. That's what I believe creates a potential perfect storm for great entrepreneurs. There's also, of course, there's a lot of romantic stories about entrepreneurs that never went to school and succeeded, or people that mostly went to school and have a big diploma from a big university and become entrepreneur day one. But those are the fringe cases. They're the exception. They're not the majority of entrepreneurship. And being an entrepreneur is not necessarily romantic either. It's really difficult. It's a lot of work. Although we like to look at some of these key entrepreneurs as heroes and put them on a pedestal, most of them have a really very hard time managing all their companies because it's hard work. And for me, success can not only be defined by profitability or number of employees. I think the path to get there is as important as the destination. I think profitability is a symptom of success, right? When you're successful, you will become profitable, but it's not the only thing that warrants being successful as an entrepreneur. So what are the key personal traits that drove me personally to become an entrepreneur? This is very important. This is not for everybody, right? Not everybody will have the same traits, or not everybody will approach it the same way. But this was for me, since it's the story about my journey. So first of all, question everything. We're going to get into those points individually deeper. So question everything, creativity and resiliency, and focus on your strength. Those are the three major points that are personal traits of mine that, you know, made me become an entrepreneur. Also, they got me in a lot of trouble, but they allowed me to become the entrepreneur I am today. So if you look at creativity and resiliency, right, what does that represent to me? So first of all, creativity, a lot of people think about creativity and like, you're going to be a great artist. You're able to do great drawings or paintings, or you're a great sculptor. You have a lot of creativity. You can write nice letters. It's not only that. For me, creativity is also in problem solving. At the core of being a great entrepreneur is to solve problems, turn even problems into advantages and opportunities for you. So I've always been a creative problem solver in my life. Then it's also important to be creative in making your product, your company, and yourself stand out in the crowd, right? So it's not necessarily about having a gimmick, but it's about using your creativity and your emotional intelligence, or your intelligence, to realize what the strengths and weaknesses of your product, your company, and yourself are, so that you can focus on those strengths, which we'll see afterwards. But in order to be able to do that, you need to be able to see them, to analyze them, and figure out which they are. And also, creativity leads to innovation in all fields, and innovation breeds success. What I mean by that is that innovation oftentimes creates those big hockey sticks that people want, creates those big new and amazing platforms or products or services that people are looking for. If you look at the Ipod and the iPhone, those are strong innovations, right? If you look at electric cars, they're a great innovation. So there's a lot that innovation brings, but to innovate, you need to be creative. Resiliency. So the resilience, it's basically the process of adapting in the face of adversity. One thing that's for sure, as an entrepreneur, it's difficult to call this a job. It's more a vocation than anything. And you will face adversity. You will have challenges. You will see problems, whether it's personal, human resources, product, accounting, company-wide. I mean, there's problems every day to solve as an entrepreneur. So resiliency is important because you need to adapt. For me, I see success as a series of challenges that are overcome, right? A lot of people have that saying, it's not about how many times you get pushed down, but it's about how many times you get back up. And although it's another romantic view of entrepreneurship, I believe in that one, because some weeks are the best weeks ever, and the week after is one of the most difficult week ever. And you rarely can plan it ahead of time, unfortunately, because you never know what's going to happen. So it's about being resilient in the face of challenge, and at the same time being creative to solve it. Resiliency is not necessarily about stubbornly pushing forward. It's about learning from challenges to overcome them. So sometimes pivoting is the best strategy in face of a problem. Sometimes bending and not breaking is also the best strategy. So I have a personal story about this. It's when I was teaching my kids to ride their bikes. So both of them are about 10 and 9 years old today, and they ride their bicycle all the time. But when I was teaching them, I taught them very differently. And my first son, it was easy. Went to the top of a hill that was grass, so it was soft. Pushed him down on his bike slowly and ran next to him, and he learned to ride his bike. That was pretty straightforward, pretty simple. My second son was a bit more scared. So I went up the hill with the bike, tried to move him down the hill, and he kept falling. And he was very scared. So I had to change my way of teaching. So sometimes a problem learning to ride a bike does not only have one solution. You need to figure out the meticulous details of each problem to be able to solve it differently. I had to change my way of teaching in order to solve that problem. So the problem was within me to change, not within what I was trying to fix. So question everything. For me, if you stop questioning, you stop learning. You have to be careful, however, because questioning and critical thinking, it's a very interesting trait, but it's also very dangerous. You could be in a position early in your career that you have multiple hierarchy bosses above you and you question everything. Then all of a sudden you might be facing a problem where if your boss is not receptive to this, you might get in trouble. So what I would say to this is it's important to question everything, but use your judgment and your creativity to find ways to adapt to the person in front of you. So if your superior, your boss, the manager, the owner that you want to have a discussion with regarding a question that you have, make sure that you are able to know how that person likes to be approached. Some people don't mind being approached in a room full of people. Some people prefer it to be one-on-one. Some people prefer text, email, voicemails. I don't know. It's important that you adapt to that so that when you want to question everything, because what's important is the answer. It's not the confrontation. So you need to learn from the questions that you have. So make sure that you're able to read the person in front of you to question properly early on. The root cause is resolving. Questioning allows you to identify the root cause. For me, a lot of people in life and in everything, when they have problems or when they don't feel good and when they have issues, they treat the symptom, right? So when you have a cold, you're going to treat the symptom. You're going to try to stop your nose from running and your eyes and all that. But the problem is not that. Those are symptoms. You need to treat the real problem. A cold, unfortunately, just requires rest and water, right? But it's the same thing for any problem in a company. If you have a cash flow problem that generates a problem revenue in June, you need to address why you're missing revenue. You don't need to address the hole in the cash flow, which is a spreadsheet. So what I mean by that is always find the root cause of the problem that you're facing that will allow you to solve it better. And then keep an open mind about different strategies, different approach to decision making. So like I said earlier, there are many different ways to solve a problem. So allow yourself to be questioned. So questioning everything is not only good about you, but it's good that you let people question you as you grow in ranks, as you get more experience, as you maybe become an entrepreneur yourself. Allowing people to question you makes you more approachable, and you might find solutions to your problems that you have not seen because somebody will come in with a different process and a different point of view in your solving of problems. Focus on your strengths. So my third point that I mentioned at the beginning, it's about knowing your strengths and your weaknesses and planning accordingly. I was taught all my life when I was younger in school, in university, in college, in high school, to find my weaknesses and make my weaknesses better and fix my weaknesses. When I grew older, I figured out that I'm better to find people around myself that are great at what I'm weak than trying to be good at everything. So the first point is about self-awareness. It's really important, in my opinion, to really know yourself, to know your key strength and weaknesses, because you need to know that information before you head into the journey as an entrepreneur. Before you start building your company, before you start your career path and go into entrepreneurship, you need to know what you're going to be good at and what you're not. Some you might not know, some you might learn as you go, but that self-awareness of being able to identify your strengths and weaknesses is very important. For me, strength is the foundation of a good entrepreneur. So they should be what you rely on to build yourself up. The role of a CEO or partner in a company can greatly vary based on your strengths. You could be the CEO and be in charge of business development, or be in charge of production, or be in charge of game design, or be in charge of art design. It doesn't matter what you're in charge of as a CEO. What matters is that you are able to work on the company and that you also know your strength to focus on that. And then I said that earlier, partner complementarity. If you are a great game designer or a great programmer or a great producer and you want to start a business, well, find partners that complement your strength. Again, going back to the self-awareness, you know what you're good at and what you're not good at. Personally, I'm pretty good at business development and at creative game design. However, one of my strongest weaknesses was the human resources aspect, where you have to manage a group of 160 employees, which all have different special requests and are not feeling good one day and feeling great the other. For me, I lack the ability to empathize with everybody in the studio, with the full spectrum of generations, and that caused problems for me. So I moved away from it. I decided that I was not going to be a part of the human resources problem solving because I did not have the right skill set to do it. It doesn't matter, they can ask me my opinion, but in the end, the decision was not me. So here's my early years. So I did not always make video games. As you can see, I used to flip burgers at McDonald's when I was 16. I was not able to grow a beard back then, so I look extremely different. But funny as it is, I did learn extremely a lot during those days. So first of all, here's some of my key learnings. Resiliency. Going back to my traits, I learned to work at a fast pace at 16 years old. Most kids at 16 years old, they're playing video games or watching TV or playing with their friends, riding their bikes. I decided to go work at McDonald's, working 24 to 30 hours a week while going to high school. So it was a lot of work. And the first 6 months, no joke, I wanted to quit every day. I would come back home and I would cry and I would ask my mom, because at that time I would still ask my mom. I would ask my mom, can I quit? I don't want to do this. I'm not good. Everybody tells me I'm not good. And my mom taught me a great lesson about resiliency and said that it's not that I'm not good, is that I want to be good too fast. And I did not want to wait to learn. I didn't to gain that experience that would allow me to get better. Of course, I did get better. This is my picture for Employee of the Month in November 1991. So I did get better enough to become the Employee of the Month. And I was really proud of it back then because I was resilient and I decided to learn and get better at my job. Creativity was also a big part of it. People would think of McDonald's of lacking creativity because, yeah, you flip burgers, you make French fries. But there was a lot of creativity in the small moments. And I remember, because I like to tell stories, I remember at one point, they changed the way the kitchens worked in McDonald's. That was a huge investment for all the restaurants in North America. And they had new containers for the cooked meat before you put them in the burgers. And they were trying to use the old spatulas to manage this. And everybody was tearing the meat and tearing the paper on which it was. And we did a consortium inside the restaurant where I worked. And I came up with the idea to use like meat pliers, which is basically allows you to take the meat with your fingers and two metal pieces, a bit like chopsticks in a way. And that was much, much more efficient. And after we came up with this solution as a team, it was implemented in all of Canada. So I was super proud that I came up with an idea that all restaurants in all the country would use afterwards. So I used my creative problem solving to take a piece of equipment in the restaurant that was used for something completely different, was used for hash browns and McChickens, and used it for the Big Mac meat. And then question everything. In video games, it's extremely important to gather data and use data to take decisions on what to do in your game. And my first integration of knowledge about data was at McDonald's. When we were, I was one of the youngest manager of a restaurant. So as a manager, you had to take in data points each day. Was there a special event? What was the weather? How hot, how cold was it? Was it raining, cloudy? Did we have special buses? Was there a street closing? All that information, which were data, the key data points, were put in the computer afterwards with the revenue on a per hour basis so that you could extrapolate why and then figure out how many people you need on a Wednesday in March in Montreal. So that would allow the restaurants to plan much better how many staff they need on a restaurant day, the same way you should be able to plan ahead how many people you need to work on a game in 12 months, right? As you plan your game, you need to know what are the features you're going to make, how many artists you know, how many programmers, how many designers, and then you need to ramp up and ramp down. It follows a bell. And then you use that because you have experience, you've gathered data, you've analyzed that data, and you know how many people you know you need to make this game. So I was 16 years old, 18 actually at that time when this happened. So that is, 27 years ago that I learned my first lesson on why data is so important. So then I went to university. My first year was in 1996. I was at the University of Sherbrooke, which is about 2 hours away from Montreal. And I studied marketing there, and I have a lot of key learnings during my university years. I've learned a lot, not necessarily in school, but about myself and about my environment. So here are some of the key points. I focus on your strength. I was not a model student by any means. Like I said earlier, I think what you learn in school is important. I think what I learned in school is I learned how to learn. And being not a model student meant that I was not in class often. However, I did realize early on that to succeed, I would have to focus on my strengths. So if I'm not an academic genius, or if I don't like to study, what can I do? Well, I was able to make great connections and influence people. What does that mean is that I was able to make enough friends and have enough friends that are really good in class that we would sit together and discuss classes and exams while, eating or having a small party, so that I could learn and prepare for the exams instead of reading a book. And also, I've learned that one of my strengths were presentation skills and deck building. You might not see it here, but I love presenting, and I loved it then as well. One of the rare person in my classes that I could get in front of a class of 40 people and I was happy. I could talk there for 45, 60 minutes without any preparation. I just liked being in front of a crowd. So I did focus on that. And those grades in those specific aspects of each class in marketing would allow me to get better grades at the end, which comes to resiliency and creativity. University can be very costly. So I came from a modest family. My family was not really wealthy, so I had to pay for everything myself, which meant that I had to juggle university classes, friends and parties, and 30 hours of work week at different places. I worked in restaurants and movie theaters. I worked everywhere to make enough money to pay for my university, pay for my apartment. Luckily, the cost of university in Canada is much, much lower than the US, so I was able to afford it. But that resiliency and creativity allowed me to juggle a very tight schedule, allowed me to find jobs in a city that I did not know anybody, just like from word of mouth and from just pushing. So I'm really happy about the fact that I've worked hard my entire life to get what I have. Then question everything. My first work as an adult, experience as work as an adult came at my university internships. And I had my really first big lessons of to be careful with people during that time. I remember I was working at a company called Perkins Paper. So a company that made like toilet paper and hand paper and all kinds of paper. And I was in charge of the catalog and building very meticulous price strategies for product, something that you can do in a game, in a free-to-play game where you have to figure out how much to sell characters and armors. So I was doing a catalog of product, and I wanted to tell the president of the company, and I was an intern, that I felt the company was doing great and I was really excited to be there. So I crossed the president in the corridor at one point, and I just stopped and I say, hey, by the way, I just want to say thanks a lot for the internship. I'm really appreciative of working here, and I think the company is doing great. However, I did not read the president well enough, and the president at that time was not interested in talking to interns. And I got scolded by my manager because I was told to not talk and not stop or interrupt the president of the company when they're very busy. So you could say that it's a trait of personality on the side of the president that was slightly wrong, and I could agree to that. But as an intern and as a, you know, someone that wants to learn, I should have questioned that moment. Is this the right time to ask that questions in the corridor, or could I do it differently? So that's something that really resonated with me. These were some of the more influential for me as a leader than actual classes during regular semesters. I learned during my classes, I learned during the marketing, the accounting, the finance, but working in the environment with seeing different managers, coworkers, how all this works together really brought me to think about who I want to be and how I want to work in my future career as an entrepreneur. I didn't know back then, but what I wanted to do as I gain more experience. And that was the first time, based on what you heard before, that I asked myself, hey, if I ever become a boss or a leader, what kind of boss do I want to be? And that is a very critical question that you should ask yourself if you're planning of starting a video game studio or joining a video game company to become a leader and a boss in that company. What kind of boss do you want to be? What personal self-awareness traits of yourself do you see are going to forge you as a leader for the future, your future career? So here's the timeline of my professional career. So after I finished university, I had a bachelor's in marketing. I wanted to do mostly sales and marketing. That's what I thought back then. And my first job in the video games industry was at Thrustmaster. Thrustmaster is a video games accessories company from France. They make joypads and steering wheels for race car games and joysticks for flight sticks and for flying games. So they're a French company. They're a sister company to Ubisoft, which you probably know for the makers of Assassin's Creed, the very popular video games franchise. And working there, it was quite the experience. It was a company managed from France, but in Montreal. So think about this. This is 6,000 kilometers difference. And I barely knew anything. I was brought on board to lead a certain accessory that they wanted to do for video games. So they wanted to have a special keyboard for the first-person shooter category of games. So what I learned there, it's about using your creativity, but also your resiliency. I played a lot of those games to figure out how they were played and who were the best players. And back then you didn't have internet, so I could not like just look at videos of influencer marketers or of gamers like filming themselves gaming. I had to actually find them, contact them by phone, talk to them, figuring out what they want to do. And that was a non-stop effort. And unfortunately, the Montreal office of Thrustmaster closed like this while I was on vacation. So I was on vacation, came back, and I was out of a job. So that was extremely fast and extremely scary because, as you know, when you start your career, losing your job is very costly. It's not like you have tons of money in your bank account waiting for you. You need to find a way to find another job right away. And I was lucky enough after my job at Thrustmaster to find a job at a company called CompuSmart, which was the biggest retailer in Canada for video games, computers, and Apple products. And that was early on. That was in 2004. And I was in charge of all Apple products, so the upcoming iPhone. And I remember one of my biggest moments was very early on. And I had gained experience from past projects, from past companies. And when I started, I was being trained by somebody. And that person training me did not have the skills or the expertise to train me properly. And they wanted to show me how to buy Apple products for 35 stores across Canada. So basically what you did is you bought everything internally and then you distributed it to the stores. And I remember going through the training and asking that person a ton of questions because I did not know what the person meant. And unfortunately, she was not able to answer my questions. So that's where I decided to be a bit more aggressive in my question asking. And I went to my boss and my who was also that person's boss. And I started working directly with my boss, which is where I started learning a lot about managing video games and managing Apple products and all that. And one of my key stories was the launch of the Apple Mini. So you see the Apple iPod Mini here, the silver one. It was the first time Apple launched smaller iPods. And it was I think it was in April. And the company at that time was making about $17 million of revenue a year on Apple products, all Apple products, computers, iPods, everything. And I did some research, right? Question everything. So I called Apple people, I called the US stores, I called everybody I knew that had an idea of how much these games would sell. And my purchase order to buy was $22 million. So the company made $17 million, and I wanted to write a check for $22 million to Apple to buy all the iPods I could. And my boss was very stressed, right? Because I'm coming to him with an increase of revenue of 40% on one product for the entire line. And he ended up, after 2 weeks of negotiation with me, we ended up buying $22 million worth of iPods. And by the time Christmas came, the same year, we were the only store in all of Canada that still had iPod in stock. So we made an absolutely killing on sales, on warranties, on cases. So it was a key moment for me to see that when you want to know more about a product, about a game, about a user, about a feature, question, test, get feedback, ask people, look at what other people are doing, look at competition, look at everything, and then make up your mind. And because of that, the company went from 17 million of revenue in Apple product to $45 million of revenue within the span of 2 years. Finally, I think another interesting story is what happened at Magnext. So this was a toys industry, and there's a very close knit between the toys industry and between the video games industry, because you learn of play patterns. Play patterns are how is somebody playing with something. In toys, it's physical. How do they play physically? And in video games, it's how do they play with the remote control and interact with the screen. So there was a lot of key learnings there, but one of the biggest one was with the magnetic toys, which were very dangerous for kids because the magnets would fall off and you could hurt yourself. We decided to reinvent the line completely. So in the span of 6 months, we did the work of what would take 14 months, redesigned, re-graphicked, made the new boxes, ordered the product in China, worked with the toy fair, so all the conferences around the world to sell your game, your toy, and we created an entirely new line of toys in the span of 6 months, and we sold $100 million worth of toys. So our creativity as a team, our ability to work together with the engineers, with the artists, with the game designers, and me as a brand manager, created a new line of toy like this, but it took a lot of work. So that was my last job before coming back to the games industry. And in 2009, I got hired at EA Mobile as a producer. EA Mobile in Montreal was making games like Scrabble and Fight Night for mobile, Rock Band. If you remember the game Rock Band, we did that for mobile as well. And I was put in charge of Scrabble. And it was a very complex product. Making the game Scrabble, we had a team in Montreal in charge of production, a team in Los Angeles in charge of technology, and a small team in Montreal outside of EA in charge of art. So I had to herd cats and bring everybody together for the same game. So it was really important to me to focus on my strengths during that time. What I mean by that is it was my first time being a producer. And as a producer in video games, you should be aligning what people do, when they do it, why they do it, and make those in increments of 2 weeks, which are called sprints. And those increments basically create the game after 14 months. I did not know how to make a game when I started there. I knew how to organize people based on my work at Thrustmasters and Mega and CompuSmart, but I did not know how to make a game. So what I did, focusing on my strengths, which are, my ability to read people and my ability to influence people, is I was super transparent and honest. I went to them and I like, guys, I don't know how to do your job specifically. What I know how to do is remove problems in front of you, remove hurdles, and make sure that you can do your job to the maximum. So what I want from you is honesty in your evaluation of your work. How long is it going to take you? How much time, how much weeks, how much time do you need to make a specific aspect of the game? And I'm going to make sure that nothing stops you from doing it. I'm going to remove meetings. I'm going to remove problems. I'm going to remove IT solutions. Everything that needs to be focused on the game, I'm going to just leave that to you. So that was extremely well received by the team, because something that you will notice if you go into a video games industry job, the producer is not the best friend of anybody usually. The producer on a video game is the person that gets no credit and gets all the blame. So when a game doesn't ship or there's a problem, the producer gets hit, and when the game is doing great, the team gets the support. So it's a very in great position. And for me, I wanted to make sure that the team knew I was on their side, and my goal was to make a better game. So that was at Electronic Arts. And then in 2010, this is when my entrepreneurial journey begins. I was working, like I said, on Scrabble, and Hibernum Creations in Montreal, a video game studio, was making the game Scrabble. And I decided at that time that I wanted to join them. So I basically quit my job at EA, which was very, very interesting for me. And I left and I went to Hibernum. To give you a bit of an idea, my salary divided by 3 from Electronic Arts to Hibernum in the first year. And it was a very important moment in my career. To work at Hibernum, I filled my credit cards to travel and to go to conferences to try to sell our games. I figured out how to pitch games on the go, like how to make documentations for pitches, how to get meetings and appointments at conferences, how to meet people to work with. I was lucky that my moment where I actually managed to launch into video games, into a video games entrepreneurship, was the same moment that a lot of my friends at Electronic Arts over the world changed jobs. So all of a sudden, as an entrepreneur at Hibernum, I could contact people at Zynga, at Activision, at Disney, all those big companies in video games, because my friends from EA left the company and went everywhere. So that provided us quite a bit of business. The company, Hibernum, did very well. In the span of 5 years, we grew it from 12 people to 160 people. And we generated revenue of about $16 million every year. So it was doing really well. Unfortunately, and there's many key learnings I think I'm going to cover after this, but the first failure came at that moment. In 2007, we had to close down Hibernum. It was a long and painful process. And I think it's really important for everybody here that wants to be an entrepreneur, that wants to launch video game studios. It's not only about the wins, right? We had a lot of wins as Hibernum. We created games for Disney. We grew the company to 160, generated profits. But there was some critical aspect that made the company close. And for me, it was a dramatic experience, but I also learned a lot. And it built my resiliency. And it also allowed me to increase my self-awareness, to really figure out what my strengths are. And by doing that, I was able to, 3 months later, move to today, which is launch of Rocket Ride Games. So in late 2017, I launched Rocket Ride Games, which is my company of today, my agency. And I launched it the same year I closed the other company, which shows a lot of resiliency for me, because you are working on a big defeat, right? You're working on letting go people, sending letters, closing the the company and all that stuff that entails closing a company, which I don't recommend on anybody. It's an experience I will cherish for my life, but it's still a pretty stressful time. And in that same year, I launched a new company, and I created very small, self-invested, I had 1 employee to start with, but I was able to take those key learnings and move them to Rocket Ride. So focusing on your strength and questioning everything. The closure of Hibernum was a long one. It took about 9 months when we started knowing that we were in trouble before we closed. So that allowed me to question everything and focus on my strength by doing a post-mortem. Why are we here? Why are we not doing better? Why are we going to close? What happened to my reputation, to my partnerships, to the employees, to my image in Quebec, and to my image worldwide? All these things I was able to review and analyze to make sure that when I launch my new company, I only focus on my strengths. So where am I weak? Who do I need around me to help those weaknesses in making Rocket Ride the best video game company it can be? And that's how I moved forward with Rocket Ride. So let's talk about Hibernum a bit more. I just covered it a little bit, but I want you to understand the importance of that company. So it was 8 years of fast learning, high success, and a conclusion full of tears. So the early years, like I said, it's actually a pretty funny story. The day I left, the day I quit at EA to move as an entrepreneur and decided, to leave everything that EA provides, which is, the big salary and big team and the protection of stock plan and insurance and all that. And I decided to jump. And the same day I got sick with appendicitis because I was too stressed. However, 3 weeks later, I started at Hibernum and we were 17 people, just 17. And to get my partnership in the company, because the company was already generating revenue, was already generating profits, not a lot, but 17 people, they were doing good. I had to accept a salary reduction of 40%, filled my personal credit cards for trade show and client visits. So I was brought on board to become a producer and a business development person because that was my strength, because I did my because I knew where I was going. And one of the important things in video games is to go to conferences. There are conferences everywhere in the world. There's a conference every 3 weeks. Not now because of the situation, but there's going to be a lot of conference when everything goes back to normal. However, if you're just generating a small amount of profits and revenue a year, it's very difficult to send people to those conferences. So I decided that it was important for the company to be able to go there, and I did it on my own. So I would pay with my personal credit card the trips to all these shows for me and my partners so that we could go present our games. That also worked really well because that provided us growth afterwards. Also, creativity. Do whatever it takes to grow your business. We were sending proposals for games, creating concepts, pitches, visits, everything of big projects that we should never have won. However, we were so resilient and creative in our desire to make those games that we've built relationships. And within the first 6 months, we had closed our first $1 million contract, which was the biggest contract the company had ever seen. But we did this because we wouldn't stop, and we were creative in our problem solving. When somebody asks you as a small team, oh, this is a pretty big project, do you have enough staff to do it? You don't say, let me check, I'll get back to you. You say, yes, I can do it. Because you don't have enough experience yet to promise it. But if you say no, you're not going to get it. So for us, it was better to say yes, move forward and find a way to do it. And we did find a way to do it, which then led, and if you look at the growth and success phase in the middle, led us to grow the company from 17 employees to 160 in the span of 5 years. We signed contracts with Disney, Magic the Gathering, Puzzle Quest. We had contracts with DNA, with Lego, with Cartoon Network, with A&E Entertainment. So big contracts with big clients because we were creative, resilient, and we would focus on our strength. At that time, the quality of Viburnum's pitches and our strong desire to find business terms to work for all parties won us great games. What I mean by that is, and I'll use a very specific example, Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest was the first big free-to-play game that we wanted to make. There's a lot of lessons for you guys in there, because as a team, we never had made a big free-to-play game. However, we had a lot of people that were extremely passionate about the brand of Magic the Gathering. So we started making a pitch. And on top of the pitch, which is, what's our concept? What will the game look like? What are the budget? What is the meta game, which is like the full game approach? So we had a big presentation of maybe 30 slides. But what we did is that we started filming the team. We started filming the team playing Magic the Gathering sessions, doing interviews with questions like, why are you so passionate about making a game for Magic the Gathering? What excites you about merging Puzzle Quest and Magic the Gathering? So we started asking questions in videos like this, and we sent those videos to the person that wanted to make the game. So what they saw there is an undeniable desire to make a game. And at equal talent, at equal experience, people are going to take passion. So as you get started in your industry, in your video games industry, and your video games company, as a junior programmer or as an entrepreneur that doesn't know how to get started, don't forget your passion. Your passion is extremely important, and that allowed us to win games like Zootopia, Magic the Gathering, and even Beauty and the Beast with Disney. So that was a really good moment. However, like I said earlier, I want to talk to you a bit about the unwanted conclusion, which is in 2017, following a series of bad breaks, we had to close the doors of Viburnum. And the experience and key learnings in that defeat, they far outweigh the ones from our past victories. And like I said, I don't wish this on anybody, but if you do it, have the wherewithal and the introspection to get very key, important learnings from it. On the resiliency side, we survived the last 9 months of the company without knowing how we would make the next payroll. And when we were 160, 110 at the time, because we had done reduction, the expenses of the company were pretty high. So every month, every 2 weeks, we had to make very specific efforts with our partners, with new clients, with the sales of our games to generate enough money to make sure that all our employees would be paid. Because that's the most important thing for us. The most important thing for us as we were facing trouble is to make sure that all the employees in our company would get paid. So we worked hard on a 2-week time frame every time for 9 months to get enough money in the company to make payroll. We also questioned everything. I think the unknown during that time was very difficult to manage. And you should always ask people around you that know how to do things, that have more experience than you, when it's critical to your company. And I think what I've learned is I was good at managing a company that was doing well, but when it was not doing well and facing big troubles from people that lend you money, from the banks, from the government, and all that stuff, it was difficult for me to know how to approach this. So I was asking a lot of questions, and it was great for me to have people around me to help me through this. So in the good or in the bad, if you have problems with your career, with your company, with your project that you're doing, ask questions. Don't feel shame for asking questions that are important for you to thrive and to get the experience that you need. And finally, the final really important point that I learned in the closing of Viburnum is to focus on my strengths. And in a time of crisis, the biggest problem, the biggest issue I had is I was trying to do too much. If my strength were to lead the business development team in some of the production, I should have focused on trying to increase the revenue of the company. And instead, I was focusing on relationship with stock owners, relationship with the government and the bank, and trying to talk to employees about different aspects of projects that we're trying to do. I should have been 100% focused on trying to make deals for the company, which I didn't do enough in my opinion, and I wish I did more. So I will always remember this, and from now on, I'm focusing on my strengths and especially on what is important. So it's not only important to focus on your strength, but you need to focus on what's important. So looking forward, and I gotta say, I did close a company. That doesn't mean that we're not excited about the future, and that experience is very important. Looking forward, I want to be able to focus on Rocket Ride's growth and myself, which means that with the years of additional experience that I've had, I've been working for about 22 years now. I had wins, I had failures. All these are notches on my belt, on my experience. It's time to put all this to work and build Rocket Ride Games as the company I want it to be. And the company I want to build, and when you think about that, it's important if you want to start your own company. What company do you want to be? What is your vision? What is your mission? How do you want to treat people in your company? It's very important because that's how you're going to be remembered as a company and as a boss or as a leader. And for me, my goal is that I want to create a company that shares the wealth that it creates with its team members as much as possible. I also want to create a company that's going to allow for developing regions in the video games industry to to shine on a worldwide basis. I work a lot with studios in Colombia, in Argentina, in Eastern Europe, like Romania, Bulgaria, and even Ukraine. I work with these studios and these companies to bring them to the worldwide stage. And now with Ernst & Young, I was invited to talk to you guys in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where you want to develop the video game culture and the video game business. So that's something that holds really close to my heart because I want to help companies in that way. I am going to continue to question everything. And as we work with the clients all over the world, we all gain success with their games. We will continue with them through an evaluation process to help them build better games, better companies, and have a better understanding of how to achieve their goals. What this means is we're a consultant company in the video games industry. People come to us because we should have answers. What's important is that we build the ability to provide those answers on how to make better games, better game making companies, and better game making individuals, but also to ally ourselves with partners that know things that we don't know. We are not necessarily very knowledgeable in the QA, the quality assurance, in the localization. So we have partners around the world that allows us, that we can ask questions to, and that we can have a relationship with to improve. Finally, I'm going to be creative. So at every step of the way, there's going to be challenges. For me, like I said, that it's not about how many times I'm going to fall, but it's how many times I'm going to get back up. So I'm going to be creative and I'm going to be resilient. And regardless of my experience, I'm going to need to face these challenges intelligently. And every challenge makes you stronger as an entrepreneur and provides you with valuable knowledge to help you achieve your success. So I'm not going to build a company that's never going to suffer. It's never going to have challenges. So I need to be aware of that, but I need to be ready to face those challenges. And with my ability to be creative and resilient and my team around me, I think I can achieve those. So that's what, for me, for Rocket Ride Games, that's what's looking forward. That's where I want to grow. So I think now it's time for questions. I think, Marash, you want to read me some questions from the crowd? I'd love to answer them.
Absolutely, Luis, and thank you very much for this amazing and very exciting journey that you walked us through. I think it was truly insightful, and it always is when someone who has such a rich experience as you do is able to share that experience with a wider audience, because the learning point that you were just walking us through, that's essentially your blood, sweat, and tears, and many years of hard work. So definitely, I'm sure that our audience is much appreciative of that. Saying that, let me start with the first question, and that would be, was there a specific moment in your career where you suddenly realized, all right, my path is going to lead me towards entrepreneurship, or was it something that you always knew?
It was definitely not something I always knew. I've always been what we considered an entrepreneur, right? So every time I worked somewhere, I would take over challenges and projects and I would make them my own, like if they were my small companies. But at that time, you don't know that you're going to become an entrepreneur. You just think that that's how you work, right? You're a guy that works hard and that's what you do. So I did not have a specific moment. However, I think the critical point for me was linked to question everything and got me in trouble more than not. And it was, I had multiple managers and bosses that I would question, I would say a bit too much. And I would, when I would ask, why am I doing this? And when the answer was because you have to do it like that, that's when I was started to not be in a good position to be managed by these people. And then when I realized that, wow, the trait across all these situations is me, right? So the bosses are different every time, but the guy that's disappointed is me every time. So I'm like, if I'm going to be told, if I'm going to make decisions that impact me negatively, might as well do it for me, by me. And that's when I decided to become an entrepreneur, out of the fact that I'd rather make the mistakes myself than make it for somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing answer as well, and there are certainly some tidbits that even I can, it resonates with me basically as well. We have one more question that is a little bit, more technical, but also very, very timely because we're all living through a pandemic time, and there is a question from the audience that somewhat touches upon this. The question is, what would be your advice for a company that is very heavily dependent on sourcing talent from abroad, that is already only able to work remotely?
I think if you have to source talents from abroad and you have to work remotely, I think it's perfect. Because what that allows you all of a sudden, that allows you to get the best talent possible for the position. And you can do that by hiring in any country in the world. And the people that you hire, they can move wherever in the world, right? So for me, my best advice would be find the best consulting agencies in human resources or in cultural aspects of different region. Make sure you understand those before you start hiring like crazy everywhere, and find the right partners that can help you find the best resources on a worldwide basis. I think Ernst & Young, for example, could be a good one. But what I mean is, as a Canadian personally, it would be very difficult for me to hire people in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or hire people in Finland and then hire somebody in Brazil, right? I need to know what to expect in the way we're going to interact personally and the relationship of the company. So getting experts in your company or expert advisors around your company that can help you manage those resources outside of your own culture or your own country is critical. And then once you have that, you're going to have the best knowledge to hire the best person for the job that you need.
Absolutely. So you would essentially highlight the cultural aspect that needs to be in check. You need to be on board with what to expect from such a diverse resource or talent pool, if I'm doing it correctly.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. I have 14 clients and I have 1 employee in Colombia. Colombia is the country with the most days off in a year. You know, when you have a day off for whatever, Halloween, Christmas, the discovery of America, Colombia has the most. It's like, so I did not know that at the beginning, right? So every 2 Mondays, he's like, oh, today's a day off, today's a day off. So luckily, I built a great relationship with that person on a one-on-one basis, so we could have a conversation. And he's a young go-getter that still works through those holidays. But if I did not know that, it's not his fault, right? It would have been my fault because of my lack of knowledge of the situation. And it's the same for studios. So all of a sudden, if every 3 weeks you have a week of 4 days instead of 5 days, it shows in how quickly you can make a game, because you're losing 1 day every 15. That's 8%. So 6%, sorry. So there's a lot of things that you need to know about different locations to be better at working with these people and have a better relationship, because it's about personal relationships if you want to have a good work environment.
I think this is a fantastic example with your Colombian employee, and I think it touches upon a trend that we're seeing as well, as the world has moved towards remote work as a standard modus operandi. it certainly feels that these kind of things, such as different working modes, working times, different number of holidays, working styles, they are starting to converge in a sense, because the whole market is becoming more and more global. So essentially, what it might eventually lead to is that we'll end up with something that will be somewhat a global consensus, at least when it comes to industries that are more open to that mode of work. And I think that the e-gaming and game development itself is certainly one of the industries where this might be working, right? So I think this is an absolutely fascinating question that we just gotten, and it shows that even companies in the kingdom are already expanding outside. They're using the workforce that is available to them across the world.
Yeah,
okay,
I agree.
let me ask you another question that is somewhat tied to the working style and the culture, and that is, how do you handle a crunch time? We have seen many occasions, especially lately, right, with leaks coming out of CD Projekt, with the latest development around the cyberpunk. The crunch time is becoming more and more a topic. So would you be able to share with us any of your experience regarding that?
Yes. So crunch time is real. It exists. It exists in video games, e-gaming. It exists in many different fields. Crunch time is usually the result of poor planning and bad promises. I'll give you an example, right? Hey, Nintendo, Xbox, and PlayStation, I promise you that I'm going to be ready for my game in December so you can advertise it with your console for Christmas. And then that's the boss of the company or somebody that says that to them. Then you go back to the team. Guys, team, I promised the game would be ready for Christmas. And they're like, no, it's not. We told you we couldn't. And then you're like, oh, but I promised. So since I promised, you have to deliver. So first of all, crunch time exists because of a lack of communication or lack of desire of understanding a real problem, right? Question everything. Question what's in front of you. Be true to yourself to understand the situation. Then once you know that, then you take a decision. The decision should have been, I cannot be ready for Christmas. I'm going to be ready for March. If you never make that promise, you're not in the problem. It's a much more complicated issue than that, but that's what it is. Then how do I handle it? I despise crunch time personally. So what I used to do at Harbinum, and I have to say the games that we used to make at Harbinum were not as high profile as a AAA games on console. However, what I would do is I would say, especially when I'll say the fault, but it's a big term, when the delays are caused by poor planning internal to the team, right? Somebody says, I can do this in 2 weeks, it takes 6, and then it's like internal promises. I would make it non-mandatory, but I would strongly recommend. What I would say is I would sit with the team and I would tell them, guys, we're late. We're late because we planned poorly internally. We're all at fault. It's not the fault of an artist, of a designer, or a tech. We should seriously consider staying. Please get back to me before the end of the week if you want to do more hours, and let's start planning accordingly. And if that's the case, I would offer, hey, lunches. I would offer them coupons at whatever places they like to eat, and I would help try to keep the spirit up. So I'm a cheerleader in those days. I keep the spirit up by trying to bring joy to the people and by also suffering with them in the trenches. I don't let the people suffer without me there with them. But that's how I am personally. That's how I treat crunch, but I try to avoid it like the plague.
Absolutely, and I think you are touching again on very important points here, because I mean it's nice from a manager or from the project leader to give out the coupons, but people are at the end of the day typically not purely motivated by something like that. Those are small rewards. Just it's more of a gesture, right? However, what you need to probably leverage is the intrinsic motivation of each and every of the employee. And people that are typically working on a project collaboratively, they don't want to let the others down, right? So they typically adapt to it. However, that's more of a like generic kind of explanation. However, I would be interested what motivates you to keep pushing forward, and not necessarily only during the crunch time. Maybe let's move away from that. But what motivates you to push forward when it comes to your entrepreneurship journey? What is it? Is it something intrinsic to you, or is it the external motivation?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. I have always been, for the longest that I remember, I've always been a guy that hates losing, that hates defeat, that hates being thought as not good enough. When I was at McDonald's and I was being told that you're not good enough to make Big Macs, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm going to show you I'm good enough. When I was in school and I was not getting good grades because I was working too much hours, and they would tell me, you don't have good grades. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm going to show you, right? So for me, it's the challenge. That's a big part. If you look afterwards at when you kind of get closer to success, I love so much to see my team, employees, my partners being happy and having a big fulfilling life. And I'll give you an example, right? Hibernum. Yes, I closed it in 2017, but at one point I had 160 employees making a good salary for their family and their kids and everybody around them. So that's 160 families that could live great thanks to the fact that I ran a company that was successful. So this is extremely rewarding for me. So one of the biggest rewards I have is to see my team around me thriving and being happy. And the last thing is, I love making games and making deals. I absolutely love being part of a game and seeing that moment where your character jumps on screen and fights, and you have that epiphany moment of creativity. They're like, that is the USP, the unique selling point of our game, of our team, of our product. That's what it is, and we're going to go to the moon with it. That moment drives me like tremendously.
Okay, so I think this is a very exhausting, but at the same time, absolutely insightful answer to that. So maybe let me wrap up with the last question. As an entrepreneur, would you be even able to distill what was your happiest and saddest moment? Obviously, you're not at the end of your journey. You still have way to go. You still need to build up Rocket Ride games, but you probably already can put your finger on some of your milestones.
Yeah, it's very difficult. The saddest moment, of course, was the day we had to tell the employees at Hibernum that we were closing. I'm not, and I'm Canadian, right? Everybody, so culturally, I say things. So it was the first time I cried in the office. So I'm a very emotional man. So crying in front of my teams and hugging people, telling them that they had to go, that was probably my saddest moment. I think my happiest moment so far, because I'm gonna have happier moments. I think my happiest moment so far was when one of our games was picked as the editor's choice by Apple, picked as the best game being released this week. That was for Zootopia. I think we also got moments with Saber's Edge and Beauty and the Beast. Basically, getting this big banner on the Apple Store and the Google Store where people say, this is the best game launched this week, you should play it. That was a tremendous moment for us. Getting 5 million downloads in one weekend, those moments of happiness are really, really big. So every deal I close, every contract I sign for a client, the joy of closing a deal for me is so high, but this one was a very high one so far.
I think that's I can easily imagine and picture that how good a feeling it must have been, to be rewarded with something like that after so much hard work and effort that you would put into the game, and then you see it being top ranked and being recognized. Yeah, I can only imagine that must have felt as the top of the world. Amazing, Luis. I think we will wrap with this question, but surely we will welcome you tomorrow again.
Yeah.
We will welcome you tomorrow again with our last training of the whole series. So now let me probably walk you through what's coming next and what we have already delivered. So tomorrow, I would like to invite all of you to join us for the last session, the Entrepreneurship Basics. We will again welcome Luis to deliver this presentation. I'm really excited about what more insightful tidbits and information and facts and learning points we will all experience together. And at the same time, I would like to recap that we are very thankful for the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology team that made this whole series happen. We have already been able to cover the industry overview, the marketing, the design thinking earlier today with Nicole and Mark, and also today entrepreneur journey together with Luis. Thank you all for coming, and I really hope that I will see you all tomorrow again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. See you soon.
Thank you.